So what makes a good leader? What are the skills they have and what will really matter in the future? What are education systems, governments, and companies succeeding and failing in nurturing future leaders? We'll try to answer these and more questions with a panel of 4 experts during the next hour or so. I will introduce you to our speakers shortly, but first I want to go through a quick round of ground rules so that we ensure a good discussion today. So please use the chat function on the right-hand side of your screen to leave comments or ask questions. You can do that now or at any time during the session. Our team will gather your questions and direct them to me so that I can take a look at the questions that you've asked. We won't be able to go through all the questions, so please respect that this is at my discretion as the moderator. Your microphones will remain mute during the session, so please do not unmute yourself, but feel free to put your camera on if you wish. Please also note that this session is being recorded and will be made public on YouTube, on the Recorded website, and on our social media channels. Finally, we're able to do this speaker session because of a partnership between Recoded and Bloomberg with a goal of upskilling youth in the Middle East to access high-value employment opportunities in the digital economy and ultimately work towards a more inclusive world. The partnership includes mentorship to our students as well as events such as this one. So now I want to introduce today's discussion by restating our commitment to make this a candid and open conversation. I expect many of you in the audience want to become leaders. Some of you may also think that you don't have what it takes to become one, or you don't even know where to start. So let me be clear. You all have a leader within you waiting to be awakened. Today, we hope to talk about trends in leadership, education, skills, vulnerability, empathy, failure, but more importantly, we want to speak to you and for you, the audience. So joining me today are 4 exceptional panelists. First, Sharif Abushari is an educator and a Recoded advisory board member. He is a software engineer that has led projects, teams, and workshops for companies like Stripe, Microsoft, Verizon, among many others. Over the past 17 years, he has taught over 4,000 adults how to design and build software solutions for the web using a number of programming languages and platforms with an agile mindset. Also joining us is Caroline Rowley. She is the corporate philanthropy lead for the UK and the Middle East at Bloomberg LP. Caroline has worked in education and the nonprofit sector for over 20 years, with a particular focus on tackling educational inequality in the UK. Our next guest is Hadil Habib. She's the Equity Fundamentals Data Analyst within Bloomberg's global data team in Dubai. She has over 80 years of experience across economic statistics and company financials. As an Iraqi Canadian, Hadil is a strong advocate for nurturing inclusive teams and driving development and education and innovation engagement in the Middle East, East Africa, and Europe. And finally, we have our own Recoded graduate, Baha Dabah. Baha graduated from our front-end web development bootcamp in Turkey this year. He moved to Istanbul in 2015, living in Syria with his cat, Sasha, in search of a safe future. He's currently freelancing as a digital marketing consultant for many clients, combining his sales and digital marketing knowledge with his web development skills. So thank you so much for joining the session today. And I want to start with this exceptionally difficult moment we're all living through. I can only imagine how unsettling it may be for a young person to be starting a career in the midst of a pandemic. But there are also opportunities. So has the type of leadership needed to help us through this moment changed? And what are the skills we should be paying attention to? So Caroline, I want to start with you and by asking how your corporate philanthropy team has been thinking about your programs for young people in the Middle East, and the future of leadership since COVID-19.
I think leadership really, and the future of leadership, cuts across everything that we do at the company. It's incredibly important to us, both in developing the skills of our employees, but also the young people that we work with across the world. And we have a range of different programs that we've supported, including our Best of Bloomberg volunteer program, which is our global volunteering initiative where we really encourage employees to support and mentor young people around the world. With leadership in particular, I think we have a real focus on that in the company, and we look for future leaders through all of our programs, really. And we have a kind of leadership development wheel that we focus on, that we look for in terms of behaviors of our existing leaders in the company and what we can do then to use that to underpin the development of leaders and future leaders. And it's things like how to spot gaps and seize opportunities, how to network to get stuff done, how to create an inclusive environment. And those are things that anybody can do in their communities. It's not just about getting work experience in that, it's about what you do in your day-to-day life. And I think that's what we really look for, and we really try to build that into the programs and give young people opportunities through our programs to access our talent, to access the workplace, in a normal environment, to come into our offices and see our buildings and meet with our employees. But in the virtual world, it's how we can create those online mentoring opportunities for young people. And I think Recoded is one of a kind of like a best practice example of something that we can do and how we can partner with our charities to really offer those opportunities out.
That I imagine from the partnership that Bloomberg has with us that mentorship also plays a very big role in the work you do. How have you leveraged the network or the employees that you have at Bloomberg to really mentor young people in the Middle East who may have leadership potential?
So obviously through this program, we're looking to harness the skills of our engineers and employees in the region through kind of skills-based remote volunteering. But we also have programs like First Robotics, which I've personally had involvement in, which is a global program that anybody can get involved in. And it's really looking at how young people can use their talents to build a robot. But it's not just a robot, it's actually all the soft skills that you build around creating a robot. So it's the team development, it's the project management, the prioritizing, working to a deadline. And we have mentors around the world that are supporting young people to do this. And that's from in-person volunteering opportunities, obviously, but through to looking at how we can expand that. We've got a team of volunteers currently working on a tool that will allow young people anywhere in the world to actually design a robot online and practice that. So I think there's so many opportunities, and I think however much the pandemic has given us and presented us with challenges, what it has done is also created a lot of opportunities. It's seen so much innovation. We've seen that through lots of our partner charities, and I think it's a really exciting time for young people to upskill and to have access to opportunities that they might not have normally had.
Thank you. And you've mentioned soft skills, and I think this is something that will be a common topic here that we're going to discuss. Those very important skills that leaders should have today. And I want to ask you, Baha, because you've been through a transition period in your life, and you join our bootcamp to learn a new skill, and then suddenly the world is upside down, right? And you now have to look for a job, and thinking about these soft skills. What has happened in the past 6 months in your life, and what skills have helped you so far to look for a job and thrive?
Well, what happened in the 6 months was actually me given a really huge opportunity to join Recoded, which was really good thing. And there was also in Recoded, there was a soft skills and career prep, what's it called, courses, where we have to go through them. And it was actually mandatory. And I was very, very grateful to that, because if they weren't mandatory, I thought that I have the experience and I had a lot of things that I already have. But when I went through it, I realized that there's a lot of things that you take for granted, but they're actually very important. The main skill that I would say that is very helpful to do this is actually communication. Communication and being able to actually communicate your weaknesses and your strengths. A lot of people have trouble communicating their weaknesses because they think this is a vulnerability and I don't want to show it. But it's actually like a very good thing to be able to do that, so you can work on your weaknesses and be able to progress and develop. One other thing is networking is very important in this era, and honestly, it's much easier now online to have networking opportunities than actually trying to figure out someone's time and someone with a lot of experience to give you some time of theirs. So this is where I think it's very important at these days to have networking and communication skills.
Yeah, you mentioned vulnerability and weaknesses. And I want you to say a little bit more about this, because just the other day I was talking to one of our students and they were saying, because I was giving advice on job applications, and they were saying how they don't want to be super open in the application, putting their thoughts and wishes or vulnerabilities because they feel like they will never get a job. And as you know, at Recoded, we actually encourage vulnerability. Can you speak a little bit about that and how that was a transition for you to being vulnerable and how that has helped you so far?
Well, the ability to be vulnerable is actually very helpful because I've seen it many times where I can come to my colleague and ask them something, and being vulnerable to your colleague is something that people don't see as something you should do. Something else is actually in the job progress, like in the job applications and these things, saying that I actually have these weaknesses and I'm working on them is actually better than saying I don't have any weaknesses, because no one's going to believe that, first of all, and second of all, knowing what you are is much. It helps the person to assess you. They know that you actually know who you are. And also, one other thing is being vulnerable helps you seek mentorship, seek guidance. We are all, no matter how much experience we have, we need guidance from someone. We need to learn. If we stop learning, there's no reason to do anything, actually. So being vulnerable and asking for help is very key in all of these conversations, I think.
Absolutely. And I think in one situation that vulnerability also plays a big role is learning and learning any skills and education. So I just want to change gears here for a little bit and talk about education, because I am personally very critical of traditional education in general and how it has not evolved to prepare students for both the future of work and becoming leaders. So Sharif, I'm looking at you here because you and I have had several conversations over the last years about what education should look like today, and some of them are very enlightening for me. And you are an educator who has spent hundreds of hours inside the classroom. So what is missing? What is really missing in this moment?
How long do we have? There's a quote by Neil Postman, something like all sensible adults realize that 90% of what happens in the public school system is useless. There's I think there's a conflict of interest fundamentally when you talk about education and the management of education between the experience of the individual and the experience of the organization, whoever the representative is, whether it's the teacher or the administrator or the minister of education, and it's a question of scale. From a learner's perspective, the experience of learning is incredibly lonely and isolating. Even your best friend can be sitting next to you, working on learning the same thing, and you feel 1,000 kilometers away from them because they get it and you don't. And it's hard to reconcile that because there's no evidence. It's just inside your head. There's no way to point at it and say, look, this hurts, or whatever. So it's a very lonely individual experience, and yet the system itself requires aggregation, requires reporting. And so I think that's the fundamental thing that's missing, is the ability to treat learners as individuals having this very lonely experience.
And I think treating learners as individuals is right on point. And I think unfortunately that is something that we don't see that often. And I see a connection between that and the creation of leaders as well, because there are skills that we acquire. So do we have reasons to be optimistic in this moment? From your experience, what are you seeing in class or in other educational institutions? Do we have reason to believe that there is a change, a shift going on, or you think the future will rely on boot camps, or even not even that, just students learning completely online and completely independently?
Well, I mean, I think that again, another quote, I don't know who it's attributed to, maybe Postman, but the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed. We hear about that. The fact is that anybody who's fluent in English can find the equivalent of many university degrees online for free 24/7. And if you are not a native speaker of English, then there's a much higher barrier. And of course, depending on sort of the long tail of languages where you happen to live, that you get sort of less and less of that fire hose that's happening. But it is an unprecedented time. And so if we focus for just a minute on English speakers, then we can say that you can learn more, faster, better online than anywhere else. And this is clearly evidenced by the people who are documenting, finishing an undergraduate degree in computer science, for example, in less than 12 months, because they're binge watching instead of Netflix, maybe, professors out of MIT from the 1980s recording, who knows what. So there's a lot out there, and there's a lot to be hopeful for, but the challenge is it's not just about the content, it's also about the community and being able to make meaning of this content that's out there. So I think we can't sort of assume that just because there's a lot of content available that someone will have the lucky break to be able to consume and synthesize that in some meaningful way without some guidance. So I think if I had a magic wand, I would wave it in the direction of maybe localized, hyper-localized learning communities, where someone representing something like a teacher or facilitator, maybe an interested parent, could help people do the typical binge watching and consumption of content, but in a directed way, so that that people end up kind of moving at their highest possible potential. Just a thought. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you're mentioning the amount of information that is out there in the internet. And I came across the other day a Twitter thread with a very interesting graph that I can share here on the chat. But talking about this, that now we have access to so much information, but there is a need for curation. There are a lot of new initiatives just focusing on that and curating content, and working to direct yourself to the best learning paths. But there is a process of discovery, and I think this is something that we're going to be coming back in the conversation. But you mentioned something, Sharif, with the opportunities that we have, but those opportunities also might be a little bit more relevant for people who, or easier for people who have the opportunity to take those opportunities if they speak English or wherever they're located. So I wanted to bring Hadil into the conversation because she is an advocate for inclusion and diversity in technology. And Hadil, you also have strong ties to the Middle East, being Iraqi Canadian. And we know that several students who go through our programs feel really disenfranchised by the education system in their countries. So I'm wondering, how can they flip that coin and overcome adversity and build a career in technology, even when the educational system is failing them?
Absolutely. I mean, I think just, to start, the Iraqi people are quite a resilient people. And even through the many hardships and decades that they've gone through, they've managed to produce some of the world's most renowned architects, doctors, and educators globally. So I think my biggest advice would be to kind of carry on that resilience, and don't be afraid to navigate new forms of learning, like Sharif was saying. Join maker spaces, engage in thought sharing platforms, and tap into these massive open online courses. These are, online free courses provided by some of the world's top universities, and they help democratize access to these leading academics. Learning tech today is accessible outside of the confines of the classroom, and don't depend on the education system, unfortunately. And also be someone that kind of charts your own course. So focus and try to steer your career in the direction that you want to go to, and don't be so fixated on the speed of how you're going, but rather make sure you're going and setting on the right direction.
And I also, I guess for a lot of our students or youth in the Middle East, it already feels so difficult to find that career, to achieve that career in technology. And when we say you can also become a leader, it feels even more difficult to get to that point. What would you say in that case, being someone who now plays not only a leadership role in your organization, but also behind movements like Women in Technology? We believe that leadership is something you can learn. So how was your process in getting to the point where you are today, and what are the things that you've learned along the way?
I think the biggest thing that you want to say is, like you mentioned at the start, leadership is not something that you're born with. It's something that you foster, you learn. A lot of these, I think part of joining companies such as Bloomberg, a lot of the times we're not fixated on the hard skills, because these are skills that we can learn on the job, but rather we tend to focus on the soft skills. We want to see people that are open to learning to lead with empathy. They're creative, they're collaborative, they're intuitive, and also like in a year like this year's, they're agile. They can adjust the course, and they can learn to change the narrative and adapt to it, and be resilient throughout all of it. And I think that would be, how I came to be where I am, is continuing to, you depend on my soft skills rather just on the, the stuff that I've learned, be it through my education and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wanted to keep talking about education for a little bit more, because Baha, I think you recently experienced the both sides of education, right? So you had your degree in mechanical engineering, if I'm not mistaken, and you also went through our boot camp. So you're able to compare, different kinds of education. And I don't mean to be overcritical about traditional education, because I think all of us have experienced that to a certain extent. My view is that it is not evolving as quickly as it should. So how would you contrast these two experiences that you had? And how do you think that programs like ours or any other bootcamp or learning experience online, does that complement what you learned at university? Or do you think that that is taking you to a whole new level, that you're learning more by becoming an independent learner?
I mean, it definitely complements it in the essence of learning. I do think that people should like not run away from typical education. The problem with the typical education is, like in Syria, I would say, I graduated from Aleppo University, which was like a very good university, I would say, before the war. Basically, there was the problem was it's good in the sense of they give you so much information. So if you want to count the amount of information that you get, yeah, it's a really good university. But the experience was very, very hard. There was no as Sharif said, like there's no personal touch in the conversation. There was no help in any way, or the help that we got was from some professors or doctors who wanted to do it on their own, but there was no guidance from the management of these universities. So each one of them was trying to do it on their own. So like one example, I specialize in textile engineering, and one of the teachers came one day and he started telling us the actual names of the parts that we're learning in the street. He said, this is its name outside of this classroom. So once you graduate, like you need to, so that was some sort of preparation, which was really nice to get, but you know, it was not mandatory. He did not have to learn this, and he did not tell us how did he acquire these names, or how we can go on about to do these things, which what I learned here in Recoded. The really good thing that I learned from Recoded was actually the ability to learn. So it's not about learning the code itself, it's about learning how to learn coding or any other skill. I got out of this boot camp feeling like I can learn anything on my own. I can just go and learn anything I want. And that is what I think the biggest thing that I got from this boot camp. It's not just the code that I learned and how to code. It's way bigger than that. So this is the contrast in my mind. If I didn't answer the rest of your question because I forgot, I don't know.
No, you did, but you also touched on an interesting point, which is learning how to learn, and that comes with confidence as well. And Caroline was mentioning before the robotics competition that they have, and I think one thing that comes out of those programs is that ability to cultivate self-confidence, leadership, and other skills. So Caroline, could you speak a little bit more about that? Because I think that is really critical, and we see that happening a lot in our programs, developing that self-confidence that then will unlock so many possibilities for learning and for their careers. So how do you approach that in your programs?
I think it kind of underpins everything that we do with those programs, really, because, you know, we're taking groups of young people who potentially have got no experience in coding, no experience in building a robot, what that even means. And I think, you know, they initially start out thinking, how am I going to do this? Because I don't know how to code and I've never built or designed a robot before. But that's such a small part of it. It's all part of the learning, of coming together, of having team leaders who are sharing out the tasks. And you'll have some people that are doing the coding, some people that are doing the marketing, some people that are trying to fundraise, other people that are kind of designing the t-shirts. And, you know, it's a real team effort, but they're all working towards this common deadline. And I think it's been incredible. It's actually a program that I've worked quite closely on and I'm really proud of. And I've seen over the years the difference that it's made in the young people that started out that program with little or no interest in it, really. It was just an after-school club that they had to pick up and do, to then at the end of the year seeing these young people emerge who are much more confident, have led teams, have spoken at fundraising events, so they've got up and been able to kind of do been like a spokesperson for their team, and really develop all of those soft skills that you see in young leaders. And I think, you know, even to the point that we've actually hired some of the young people that have worked on the first robotics program into our apprenticeship program, one of which still works with us now. And I think that difference has been incredible. Another student who I remember seeing on day one, who was quite kind of unenthused about the project to start off with, last year graduated in computer science at university, and had completely changed her career path as a result of doing this program. And I think that's what's inspirational for me, but also for other young people who are coming through the program and seeing that, oh, there are girls doing this, I want to do it, why can't I do it? And I think, you know, seeing the successes of other students makes a big difference.
No doubt about it. And isn't that so important? I like to think that, you know, while we do a Recoded, and perhaps you feel the same about your work, we give them a little push, right? Because all we can do is to show a little bit of the way, but the choice is always on the learner, our students. I guess a lot of those who are here with us today listening to this speaker session, it's your choice. In the end, if you take ownership of that, you can do anything. You can, cultivate that, growth mindset and end up achieving those things. It's quite incredible. And in the last speaker session that we had a very frank discussion about diversity in technology, and we talked at length about gender dynamics. And now we see more women in leadership roles, but it's undeniable that bias and discrimination are still here and pretty much alive as visible or invisible barriers to women. So I want to go first to Hadil, but I'm interested in hearing your thoughts as well, Caroline. What are some strategies that you have seen work when it comes to having more gender diversity in leadership roles in technology, whether it is what you've seen, within Bloomberg, but also other initiatives that you're part of? So I would like to hear from you, Hadil, and Caroline. Feel free to, jump in after that.
Diversity in thought. I think what women can bring to the table, it just doesn't compare sometimes through different kind of experiences. Some of them being mothers, some of them being I feel like everything that a woman goes through, there's always an extra amount of effort that they need to do to prove themselves. And that extra effort is always shown in their leadership. So they know all about having to go that extra mile. They know all about uncovering any unconscious bias. And I think that really comes through their diversity and thought, and the way that they lead their teams. I mean, I don't mean to say this to say that only women do this, but I think women do a very good job with showing us how they can lead with empathy, how they can, even sometimes, like, you look at a mother of 2 children, 3 children, you can get how that mom can, prioritize her time, how she can strategize. But it's also, they have a lot of battles that they go through, and I think that prepares them for a lot of harder situations that people from the opposite gender may not feel or come through experience.
Caroline?
Yeah, so we've got a few different programs that we run. We look to partner with organizations on the ground that are really supporting women into tech. We have an internal community called the Bloomberg Women in Tech Community, which brings females in tech together and leaders to talk and connect and share experiences. But we also look for areas in which we can really give women in the company and female leaders in the company a platform, because I think there's nothing more powerful than a role model, and to be able to give young people access to those inspirational women and to hear their journeys and their pathways and stories about what challenges I've overcome to get to this point, and how I did it, and to really hear from people around the reality of being a working mom, and the reality of what they've done and how they've learned and how they've overcome, I think is really, really, really important. And so we do our best to kind of elevate those female leaders where we can, and I suppose give opportunities to young people to also tap into those networks, because I think networking is so critical for anybody. It's who you meet, it's these role models that inspire you, and one conversation can really make such a massive difference with somebody who kind of motivates and inspires you. So it's about what we can do to support our internal employees, but it's also about how we can harness their skills and their presence to really have an impact with the young people that we engage with as well.
Yeah, and I want to bring the boys into this discussion as well. And Sharif, I just want to hand over this question to you, because you've mentored bright female technologists, and you also work for technology companies where perhaps there are not that many women, or I might be mistaken here. But knowing you as much as I know you're a big champion of more women in technology as well. So what can we do, us men, with the ones putting some obstacles out there, to make sure that diversity is happening in leadership roles?
Well, I'm not qualified really to answer this question, but I'll speak from just a personal perspective. I want to add to the thread that this may not just be a question of gender lines, but also meant like disposition lines. There are males who have feminine tendencies and think in ways that are, again, reductive and generalizing, more holistic than men who are laser focused, for example, on profit-seeking activities or whatever the system is that we're talking about. So I think, having said that, I want to add that it's not just about mentoring, say, women, but also men who don't present as kind of the go-getting, whatever, laser-focused kind of typical male stereotype. In that it really is about the individual and what the individual needs. That's my sense, and that starts with listening. It starts with making room for someone who thinks differently from any way you've ever experienced or could possibly understand. And then trying to reconcile, let's say, what ought to be done or could be done or should be done with their perspective, right? That I think that maybe it's a bit vague. So let me just go back to starting with listening. And if my wife could overhear this conversation, she would probably slap me up the backside of the head or something. But the point is, I'm not qualified to talk about this. I'll pass there.
Point taken, Sharif. So we're getting some questions from the audience, and I do want to go to those questions. But before I do that, I just want to have a last round with the four of you, because we're now here talking about skills for leadership. If you could sit in front of our audience now, who are young people from all over, I guess, all over the world, but there are a lot of you here who are from the Middle East region. What would you say are the one to three skills that they should be focusing on today, to become the leaders of tomorrow? So I'll start with you, Caroline.
1 to 3. Wow. So I think in terms of what we look for, passion and enthusiasm is so important. I think, everybody has a very different background, very different education. But for us, when we're recruiting, that having that passion, having that spark and that enthusiasm and really loving the subject area and showing that you've taken that time to learn outside of the classroom and on your own and off your own back, I think is really important. So that's one. Networking skills, as mentioned before, I think is also really, really important. So learning to kind of be confident in talking to different people and introducing yourself and making those connections and utilizing those connections and not being afraid to reach out to people and say, could I have some advice? I'm thinking about doing this. Could you recommend a route for me to go or a course that I could learn, and things like that, I think is really important. So what's that? That's 2. That's networking and enthusiasm. And I suppose it's a willingness to learn, which I think somebody also mentioned earlier. I think particularly in the tech industry, it's lifelong learning. Things move at such a pace that you need to be, I suppose, I'm trying to think of the right word, but you need to be prepared to be constantly learning and be constantly able to be agile and think about, I'm going to learn this new skill, I'm going to learn this new piece of code. I think that as well is really, really critical, particularly in tech industry and the way the world is going right now.
Amazing, thank you. Sharif, want to go next?
Oh, back to my comfort zone. Thank you. I think if I were to name 3 things, I would start with what Behat was talking about that you picked up on, Marcelo. The first and sort of key piece is our relationship with confusion. I think we're trained to be uncomfortable, fear, and sort of avoid confusion. It makes you feel like the dunce, and you don't get sort of the rewards that you get in the typical education system. But if we can actually learn to get excited about confusion as that sort of last recognizable milestone before you learn something new. There's sort of nothing past that except knowing the new thing. Then we can really be energized when we have an opportunity to learn something new, and that is actually symptomatic of growth mindset children, for example, in Carol Dweck's work. So our relationship with confusion is sort of the key piece for me there. The second thing I think is our relationship with ourselves, and so knowing how we are when we're under pressure or being judged or being self-critical, when we're feeling energetic or feeling down, and what we need in those moments, I think, is key to sort of high performance learning, if we want to call it something like that. And then maybe like knowing we could sort of wrap it up. 3 is a good number, like the context of learning, sort of the material and the community, right? Like where are we and why are we there? That helps us to maintain sort of a sense of purpose and drive at sort of the highest possible fidelity, so that we don't get distracted or allow ourselves to procrastinate, unreasonably.
I love when you talk about excitement with confusion, because that is so true. And as a student, I used to be so afraid of that confusion. And if I could give any advice for anyone learning anything now, is like embrace that confusion, because it's really part of the journey. Hadil?
One, I would say agility, be able to adapt and change the course. I think that's something that, you might be working very hard towards something, and then things may change or come along the way. You need to be able to adapt to that course. I also want to say be relationship driven, partner with stakeholders, look for opportunities to collaborate, and grow your network, and really just have that good relationship piece, and be a good communicator, because a lot of the time what we're working on, it's only as good as we're able to communicate the vision and set the tone and the strategy of what we're focusing on, what we're doing, and why we're doing what we're doing. So I think communication is also a key piece.
Absolutely. So, Baha, your turn.
Skills are like a very big subject. Like there's so many skills that you need to have to be a leader. But I want to say that the most important thing is to have a plan, especially for people who went through what I went through. I want to say, have a plan, and the plan starts with where am I? And this is very hard to answer, because it's not just who am I. It's just more of experiencing who you are on a more of a ask people around you to go to guides, go to mentors, to ask them, like, what am I good at? What am I bad at? And how do I know what I'm good at? And how do I know what I'm bad at? And all of these questions to define yourself. This is one thing. And that's the step one of having a plan. And then definitely decide where you're going. And it's not just don't just say I want to be a manager or I want to be a leader. Have a specified plan for yourself, who you are, gives you where you're going, and make sure to question every goal that you have. Why do I have this goal? And is it something healthy? Is it something good for me? Is it something that I'm going to enjoy? I've went through a lot of experiences where I was like, okay, I reached this goal, but I actually don't like it. I wish I actually questioned it. Have the confidence. I know it's not a skill, but it's a good thing to have. Have the confidence to seek help or seek guidance. Talk to mentors. Have the confidence to say I can learn something. Have the confidence to say I can start a position even though I'm not 100% qualified for it, but I can work on myself to be where they need me, and I can also exceed. The most important thing to me is actually having learning as your motive, as your drive. If you have a passion for learning, Caroline said it before, if you have a passion for learning, it's the most important thing. And I guess the one last thing is empathy. Every good leader has empathy, and this is very important to be a leader, to have empathy, to understand what everyone is going through and empathize with it.
Thank you so much, Baha. So now I want to turn to the questions from the audience. If you haven't sent a question, you still have time to send us a few questions here, and I see them coming through. So I'll start with a question, and don't forget, if you have a question specifically to one of our speakers, please say so. So we have the first question here from Fadime. She is asking, do companies trust people who don't have a traditional education? I'll leave it open for the four speakers. If you want to answer this question, just unmute yourself and go ahead.
I can say something, but sorry, Caroline is more qualified than me to say. To answer.
Go ahead, Caroline.
Thank you. Look, I think, you know, we're always looking for qualifications because it's important to have them where you can. But at the same time, I think I pride myself in working at Bloomberg because we are also looking at experience and we're looking at what people have done, that entrepreneurial spirit, you know, what I was talking about earlier in terms of going above and beyond to learn yourself and to find your own ways of doing things as well. So I think we've got somebody not on mute. Yeah, so I think it's definitely something that we look for. It's, you know, qualifications are important, but they're also not everything. I think that's the point that I'm trying to get to. And, you know, when we have some of our amazing candidates who don't have qualifications and who, you know, have come through other routes and have come through work experiences and through networks and through connecting with people. So I think it's definitely not something that should hold you back. It's just a driver to really look at where you want to be and utilize those networks and utilize the opportunities that come your way and courses and learning to really try and do as much as you can outside of that.
I just wanted to say from personal experience, I am a mechanical engineer, textile engineer, you can call me. I worked in the medical field. I worked in sales. I worked in marketing. I worked in digital marketing. I landed so many jobs without the you know, the certificate that you're looking for. So it's not very important as much as showing the passion, I mean.
Makes sense, thank you. I have a question here from Ali to Sharif. How would newer approaches to education solve the problem of people having different learning styles?
Happy to try and address that. I just wanted to make a note that I posted a response with a link to a website for identifying companies that valued non-traditional educational backgrounds among other values. And this student is a bootcamp graduate who built, the person who built this website in the business that I just shared as well. In terms of learning styles, there's actually some data out there about visual, auditory, kinesthetic learners that people tend to repeat, but it's not defensible research, and there's some kind of recent articles about how it's not a thing. We're all visual learners, we're all auditory learners, we're all kinesthetic learners. And there is a significant body of research that shows that sort of multimodal learning is better than single modal learning, or if you're trying to study for a test, that you should change the place and time in which you learn to force you to kind of disconnect from the typical stimuli around you, or that you should, you know, in reviewing material, force yourself to struggle with answers because that kind of stimulates your mind to add some kind of cost function to remembering the material, and so it becomes more valuable to remember than to forget. So there's a tons of books and body of research on this. I'm happy to put a list of a few that I'm familiar with. So when we talk about like modeling education in a way that's better for different kinds of learners, I think we could start by attenuating or maybe removing altogether this idea of performance learning, where it's important to learn it faster for some reason. I don't know why. Or that it's important that you kind of score above a certain point on a test by a certain time. Again, these sort of administrative machinations are useful for the organization of learning, but not necessarily for the individual. And so mastery learning is a classic example of that. And there are a few more like this with schools around the planet that are experimenting with these new models. So if anybody wants to ping me afterwards, I'm happy to continue this discussion. It's quite a deep one that I'm fascinated by.
Thank you, Sharif. Still on the topic of education and other skills, Raza is asking how to improve the soft skills by taking a course or by acquiring that by experience. Any of you have any thoughts on that?
I can have a go at this. I think soft skills, I suppose it's hard when you're doing online learning to develop soft skills, but I suppose it's what you do around that in terms of kind of connecting with other people on the course. Can you set up a study group outside of the course with other people to kind of connect with them and to have a slight leadership element, I suppose, in doing that? It's the things that you do to wrap around that course, I suppose, that helps you then create the soft skills. And it's even things like the time management and the prioritization and how you are allocating time to your day to make sure you're studying and you're preparing, how you're taking notes, and it's those, they're all soft skills. They're all part of supporting you to kind of develop in terms of your skills and also your leadership skills. So I think when you're on an online course, it's quite hard to see how you're developing those soft skills, but you are doing it, but it's what you can do to wrap around that, I think, as well, that will help.
I'd like to offer as well that a lot of these skills are transferable. So take, for example, the important leadership skill of containing uncertainty. So as a parent, your child doesn't know whether or not you're finding a job, losing a job, what the exchange rate is, what your rent is, you know, or mortgage. They don't know any of that stuff. And as a parent, you contain that uncertainty so that they can grow happily and healthily. And not in a patronizing way, but sort of in a similar schema, you know, leaders contain uncertainty for the people on their teams or the people that are around them so that they can do their good work. And that skill is transferable in the sense that you can go out today and start a group of people and say, hey, let's go this way. And the things that you'll learn from facilitating that movement of others, how do you reconcile conflict? How do you include people in the group who are, you know, feeling disenfranchised? How do you set direction and maintain it? Those are tremendous skills that would transfer to any leadership role. And you don't need anybody's permission to do that. If you do, I'm giving you my permission right now. Go out and do it.
Thanks, Sharif. One other question we have here from Silva. It was mentioned that online courses and bootcamps might replace college degrees. What is the possibility of collaboration between these two to best serve students who are already in college? And here I pose my own question. Can programs like bootcamps and online courses really replace college degrees? Is that a thorny question?
I mean, as someone who had both of them, it's really hard to replace like typical education experiences. I know you think so, but I think that like you do need that not bootcamp education for people who are not interested in bootcamps. But if like for me, for instance, yeah, I would have if there like I don't think there was a bootcamp for textile engineering, although I did not want to have to be a textile engineer. That's where the problem is. Typical education pushed me to textile engineering, but I don't think there is going to be a textile engineer through a bootcamp. I don't know how that can be, but tech might be might be replacing. I would say yes in the tech field, but you know, other fields it's hard.
I think as well there's a place for both. And, you know, it depends on the individual, what you have access to, your learning style, what makes you feel comfortable. I think there's definitely a place for both.
I'd like to suggest that it doesn't have to be either or. So agreeing with Caroline here, but it could be like a yes and, right? So the idea that school has to be theoretical or practical seems a bit limiting. What if we had as integrated as sort of part of our professional culture a month-long learning vacation every year? What if we agreed that as part of joining a local community that you had to contribute to writing, part of the book of, whatever rules that they use? What if when your children joined a new school, you were invited to come in and give workshops for other parents about whatever your area of competence was? We treat education so much as this sort of isolated event in our lives, something that you can be sort of inoculated against once you've passed the test. It's like you get the stamp and you can forget about it. But in reality, like what we're feeling, what we're perceiving, some more than others, depending on your professional domain, for example, is that things are getting faster and moving faster because of this availability of information and connectivity. And so maybe completely new models are needed. And there I would challenge like the artists and the philosophers to lean into this problem, because it's not an engineering problem.
Yeah, and we're getting to the end of our session, but I do want to give the word to Hadil. I think you wanted to make a comment on that. Before that, I just want to remind you that very soon we're going to be posting a short feedback survey in the chat. So please take some time to fill out the survey. It's really important for us. It helps us to improve our future speaker sessions. So make sure that you do take a couple of minutes to do that. Now, Hadil, you have the last word.
I was just going to build upon, I think, what everyone said before me. It doesn't have to be either or. And I think the trend now is, even scrolling sometimes through my Instagram feed, I get, ads for online like certificates from universities, from the Wharton School of Business, from Stanford. So I think it's undeniable that these online learnings are a viable platform to actually to learning, and is one of the ways forward.
Well, I want to thank you so much, the speakers tonight, and everyone for joining us. This was the last session on bridging the digital inequality gap in the Middle East in partnership with Bloomberg. I want to take a minute to show our appreciation for everyone who has joined these sessions over the last several months. I also want to recognize our team at Recoded for the amazing work they've done. We have enjoyed every minute of these discussions, and we hope it has helped you, the audience, to think and reflect on how to overcome the challenges and also seize the opportunities ahead of us. I also want to show our big gratitude again to the Bloomberg team. We could not have wished for a better partner to engage with us in conversations of this magnitude. You can still go to recoded.com, that is re-coded.com, or directly to recoded.com/Bloomberg-sessions. That's where you will find all the previous sessions, as well as this one in a little bit. Just give us some time to upload it. You can watch these sessions again and learn from them. Please also follow us on social media at Recoded Official, or subscribe to our newsletter to receive updates on future events and activities. Don't forget to fill out the short feedback survey. I hope this was enlightening for you. Very grateful for all the speakers again. I hope you have an excellent end of your week, and stay safe and stay healthy. Bye-bye, and until next time.